By way of introduction, if anyone hasn't attended any meetings that I've addressed in the past, I come from a socialist background, and a lot of what I'm going to say tonight comes from the socialist wing of the independence movement, and part of that thrust is the way I address the audience. I usually address you as brothers and sisters, so I hope that you don't take offence. I think that we are all part of the Win family, we're all part of the Indie family in here, and that we hopefully are of a Win mind as part of a Win big clan in favour of one big cause. And the theme of what I want to try and promote tonight is that we have a duty within the independence family to openly and candidly, but always in a comradely fashion, discuss tactics and strategy in relation to how we secure the break with the British Union and the establishment of an independent Scotland. Some of us will have particular visions about how we see an independent Scotland shaping up, and I hope to give you some of what I believe an independent Scotland should look like, but clearly in the understanding that there is no compulsion for any of us in this room to share our vision of what that independent Scotland should look like. The compunction that we've got in this room is to share the absolute commitment to the cause of independence. I always make the point of these meetings and any independence meeting that we're addressing, nothing changes. Nothing changes the day after we secure our independence, apart from the ability to change everything. That's what we have to accept, that this journey that we are on doesn't end when we secure independence. It starts when we secure independence, because then we get to feed in the talents and the hopes and the aspirations of ordinary people here in Scotland about how we want our country to look, the things we want our country to do, and the standing that we want our country to have in the world stage. But I think it's important to address tonight what I think is an ongoing and live debate within the independence movement. And that is what's next. Indie Ref 2. Within the Indie family, I don't think any of us would disagree that we all support Indie Ref 2. However, we would be foolish not to recognise that there is an ongoing debate about when. When should we have Indie Ref 2? And that's what I want to primarily address. I've read and I've listened to some voices, many of whom I respect, who have suggested that we shouldn't use the mandate that we have for Indie Ref 2 before 2021, and that the Indie movement should resign itself to building towards the 2021 Scottish Parliament elections and securing a new mandate for Indie Ref 2. Now, I don't want to deride that opinion, but I do want to argue with that opinion. I think it's wrong. I think it's tactically wrong, and I think it's principally wrong. And I hope to explain why. One of the first grounds upon which I want to argue that Indie Ref 2 should not be postponed beyond, at the latest, spring of 2019, I would prefer September/October of next year, 2018. That's my preference. I could live with spring 2019, but I would prefer next September or October. And here's why. I think we have to address the fact that after the incredible campaign that many of us, if not all of us, were involved in 2013, 2014, we were elated on one hand because we had such a good vote, because we'd convinced 1.6 million ordinary citizens across Scotland, and all of the physiological breakdown of that vote shows that the ones that we convinced more than any were the young people and the working class. The young people and the working class, because all the physiological breakdown of the indie vote of 2014 shows that if you were young and working class, you were more likely to have voted yes. If you were old and well off, you were more likely to have voted no. That's the breakdown. We had a campaign which I think, I hear some people talk about the need to discuss the failures and the need to address the shortfalls. And, you know, you don't fight a battle. I mean, even when you win, I love football, so let's use football analogies. Even when you win a game, you always analyse it and think, well, we could have scored more. And perhaps we shouldn't have let a goal in. So you always analyse, even when you win things. So it's right that you analyse things when you lose, of course it is. But you analyse it, I think, rationally. And you analyse it using a bit of fairness across the board. Because we have to accept that we fought in 2014 a campaign to break the biggest, oldest and most successful imperialist union in history. The British state has survived this long because it's clever, because it's powerful, because it knows how to give and take. It knows how to survive. And let's be clear about this. At the height of the referendum campaign, particularly that couple of weeks before the vote, when the opinion polls were indicating we were going to win, you've got to understand, we've all got to understand, this wasn't just a wee vote, a wee decision somewhere in the north of Europe that wouldn't really affect anywhere in the world. This was a geopolitical decision of absolutely incredible proportions, primarily because of nuclear weapons. Because on the back of voting yes, it was quite clear why we were voting yes, or one of the reasons we were voting yes, is because we wanted and demanded unilateral nuclear disarmament. And therefore, the whole of the world establishment had its eye on what was happening in Scotland because of the possible consequences of an independence vote. We came up short. I'll come back to say more about that in a few minutes. We came up short. But it would be wrong not to recognise how well we actually did in the face of an establishment that is absolutely brutal, that is absolutely ruthless, and is absolutely without principle. A British establishment that would do and say anything to survive. They lied, they lied, they lied. They bullied. They managed to create, I mean, one of my favourite stories was one that was the last weekend before the vote that came apparently from Bloomberg and made the BBC 24 First Bulletin News. And it was to the effect that a vote for independence in Scotland was going to lead to a new recession across Europe. You know, we heard all the ones about we're going to cause a recession in Britain, but this was new, this was a different level. a yes vote was going to lead to a new recession across Europe. First item in this BBC 24 bulletin, I watched throughout the day. And slowly but surely it began to drop off the news because it couldn't sustain any examination. But what did it do? It did what the unionist press and the unionist media did throughout the campaign. It launched a grenade into the argument you're going to lose your pensions if you vote for independence. B&Q is going to up sticks and leave if you vote independence. You can say goodbye to the Royal Bank of Scotland if you vote independence. There'll be no, remember this one, there'll be no Royal Frigate orders in the Clyde if you vote independence. The civil service jobs will be leaving by the thousands if you vote independence. Grenade after grenade after grenade, trying to frighten people. It wasn't called Project Fear for nothing. We know all of that. But what happened afterwards? What happened afterwards is, I think, we tried to draw the lessons. I remember being on the BBC the night of the referendum. I was invited into the heart of the beast. And I was on the panel. And wee Glenn was waxing lyrical as the results were coming in. And Joanne Lamont, who wasn't on the panel, but she tweeted when the result came in, great victory for Scottish Labour. Great victory for Scottish Labour. And some of you may recall, I said on that panel there and then, I said, Labour should go home tonight and look up the term Pyrrhic victory. Pyrrhic victory. Coming from the Greek general who, in the course of Greek wars many hundreds of years ago, wanted to win a battle so much that he expended the majority of his troops in this one battle. And he won the battle. But because he'd expended so many of his troops, he ended up losing the war. And that's where the term Pyrrhic victory emerged. And that's exactly what I believed had happened that night. Labour could lay claim to a victory, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. Because their allegiance with the Tories, their sipping of champagne, their joining of hands and waving of the Union Jack was so offensive to the core working class vote. They talked down Scotland so much and so critically that they would never recover. And what we, in the course of the following 12 months did, is we began to develop strategies, didn't we? We recognised what they did in 2014 was they united the Unionists. What we said we should do in 2015, at the general election, is we should unite the Yes movement. That's why people like me, a socialist, and it wasn't easy, and I got a lot of gripes from it, a lot of criticisms from people on the left, and that's just the way it goes. Sometimes that happens. But my argument in the run-up to the 2015 general election was that the left should put down its electoral challenge on the basis of doing to the Unionists what they had done to us, unite the Yes movement behind the only political party that had a chance of winning, which was the SNP. And it's not as if, come on, it's not as if we were asking people to walk over hot roasting coals. Yes, as a socialist, I recognise the shortcomings of the SNP as a political party. It's not a socialist party. Doesn't pretend to be a socialist party. But to try and pretend that it's not a left-of-centre progressive political party is to argue black as white. The SNP is a left-of-centre progressive party. It has some key left-of-centre political policies. And it was with that in mind, particularly as they adopted an anti-austerity campaign, particularly as they promoted unilateral nuclear disarmament, and particularly as they retained their commitment to independence. It was, I think, the right thing to do to call for people to lend their votes. Some people had already given their votes to SNP or SNP supporters, that's fine. Everyone else in Scotland, left or centre and independent supporters, should lend their votes to the SNP in 2015. I think what happened in 2015 was a political earthquake, the likes of which we had never seen. I've said it before, I'll say it again, for anybody in here, particularly of a generation of like 40 and above, the idea that someone would approach you and say, you know, Labour's going to be reduced to 1 seat at the next general election. You know that here in Scotland. And people would have looked at you and said, I think that boy maybe needs some treatment. What's he been on, is what they would be saying. And that's what happened. Think about that, that's what happened. People in here, working class people, many of you would have been brought up with grandparents that were Labour, died in the wool. Families died in the wool. The idea that Labour in Scotland were reduced to 1 seat out of 59 was a political earthquake. 56 independent supporters were sent to Westminster. Now, maybe say a wee bit more about this later. I do recall speaking at least 6 or 7 rallies in favour of various SNP candidates, and I always used the one phrase which I think was important and that we should recall, and that is that we were sending them down there to settle up, not to settle down. Now, we may have a debate about this and we can have an open and friendly discussion. I read and listen to reports about X, Y and Z select committees, and I hear some SNP members talk about how they are desperate to go on to this select committee or that select committee, how they want to be the vice chair of a committee, how they want to move a particular motion at a select committee. And I've got to say, and as I say, we can discuss it and we can debate it, I would much rather hear about SNP members withdrawing from committees, making select committees unworkable. I actually don't want the SNP to help Westminster work better. I want the SNP to make Westminster no work at all. I would much rather. I would much rather, and I know there is an argument, there's a cogent argument to say, while we're there, we have to represent our constituents, we have to try and make the best of a bad job, and I can understand all of that. But there's only one end game with that strategy, and that is that you apply a last pass after a last pass after a last pass. You have the situation that we had with the bedroom tax and still have with the bedroom tax, where we here in Scotland, quite rightly as a matter of fact, are alleviating one of the most horrible, coldest, callous, cruelest policies that these swine have introduced in relation to the bedroom tax, punishing the poor for being poor. Because it only applies to people that are on housing benefit. So you need to be poor before you get punished. Punishing the poor for being poor, and the Scottish Government's decided to alleviate that. But how much can we alleviate before people start to say, oh, hey, wait a minute, we're cutting on schools, we're cutting in hospitals, we're not providing the same level of public services. Why? Well, because we're too busy alleviating Tory cuts. There is a problem with that strategy. And it's from my point of view that I think we had an elan, we had an enthusiasm, we had a boldness. We sent 56 members to Westminster. And I wanted them to go down there and raise the roof. I wanted them to go down there and cause chaos. I wanted them to get kicked out of debates. I didn't want to hear them saying that they'd managed to become the chair or vice chair of some bloody grand select committee that is nothing more than hot air. That place is dripping to the rafters with injustice, with privilege. It represents in tooth and nail nothing more, nothing less than the British establishment. You don't work with that. You overthrow that. That's what independence is all about. And I think the result in 2015, in my opinion, gave us immediately, on the back of the vow that was broken, on the back of the lies in relation to pensions, on the back of the lies in relation to jobs, I think that gave us the mandate to go back to the people of Scotland given those lies. Then you had the 2016 elections. And the SNP more overtly said that a majority in the Scottish Parliament would be a mandate for Indy Ref 2. Well, tonight may not be the time to do it. I think it has to be done before the next Scottish Parliament elections. But please, particularly those of you who are SNP members here tonight, please don't repeat the mistake of 2016. People like myself argued vehemently, first vote SNP. First vote SNP all across Scotland. But we analysed, we looked at the electoral system, we know why it was built into the Scottish Parliament. We knew what the result would be of a 2 votes SNP strategy. We tried to warn people on social media. We tried to be friendly and comradely. We never even asked. I remember putting out all sorts of posts and appeals, and I said, look, don't use your second vote for solidarity. That's my political party. Don't use it for us. Use it for an independent supporting candidate. Now, if that happens to be solidarity, brilliant. But you've got a wide selection, whether it be Greens, whether it be Rise, whether it be other independent supporting parties. But to give both your votes to the SNP helps no one but the Unionists. And we were derided, criticised, ridiculed. I have to say to you, I come from Glasgow, brothers and sisters. Glasgow is a yes city. Glasgow voted yes. Why is it then in a yes city that we have of 7 list MSPs, 6 of them are Unionists? Because of a failed strategy of 2 votes SNP. That's why. Because hundreds of thousands of second SNP votes weren't just wasted. It's bad enough to waste them. They weren't just wasted. They actually assisted the Unionists. Please don't make that mistake again. Please learn the lessons of this electoral system and make sure that we unite the first votes round the SNP, but we use the second votes for other indie candidates at that election. We have a situation where in 2016, despite that failed strategy which led the number of Unionists getting returned to that Parliament much more than should have been, there was still an indie majority. And of course in March of this year a debate began led by Nicola calling for a renewed mandate for Indy Ref 2 and for that Indy Ref 2 ballot to be held in either September, October of 2018 or at the latest spring of 2019. There was much debate, there was much gnashing of teeth, but by some 69 votes to 59 it was passed. That's a mandate. That's a mandate. And Alec Salmond, former First Minister himself in the Today programme, made the point quite clearly that that was a mandate that was won at an election. Because the majority in the Scottish Parliament wasn't a manufactured majority, it was a majority that was won at a democratic election. Now we have the general election earlier this year, and some people are saying, oh, wait a wee minute, SNP didn't do as good as they did 2 years ago. It's a wee bit rich, isn't it? You listen to some of the unionist press, you would think the SNP lost, wouldn't you? You would think they lost. They had the second best result in their history, but apparently they were to regret that, you know. More MPs returned than all of the unionists put together. But somehow or other it was to be interpreted and promoted as a defeat. It was part of the unionist machine, I think, undermining the confidence, undermining the prospect, because they don't want a second in their F2. They don't want it. And they're trying, I think, to frighten people, to corral people into a position of, we shouldn't go for it. And that's why I hear people say, let's wait a while, because look what happened in that election. SNP lost nearly 500,000 votes. Nearly 500,000 votes. Now, some people then say the Tory vote increased by nearly 300,000. Surely you've not got a loss of votes from SNP to Tory. I don't think it's as simple as that. I actually think that some of the unionist vote listened to their unionist leaders in red colours. Because when Doug Dale encouraged Labour supporters in seats across Scotland to vote Tory rather than vote SNP, I think some of them listened to them. I think you had a situation where the Labour Party in Scotland, yet again, should be ashamed of what they did at that general election. And by the way, look at the result. I couldn't believe this. After the election, this unionist press was having a go at Nicola and talking about failures. They just won 35 seats, second best result in history. But they were having a go at her. Keza Dugdale, on the other hand, had managed, at a time when Jeremy Corbyn had managed to gain the biggest swing to Labour since Clement Attlee's government in 1945, when he had won that in England and Wales, the increase of the Labour vote in Scotland was 9,800. And that was mostly in one seat in Edinburgh. The truth is, if you look at the analysis, Labour lost thousands of votes in every seat across Scotland. You have a situation where they failed spectacularly. I actually think a lot of SNP voters, some of those that abandoned the SNP, many of them, and I'll argue this point, it's reckoned at least 200,000 simply didn't vote, and the turnout backs that up. Simply didn't vote. Others, I would argue, others were more likely to have left and probably voted for Corbyn's appearance of left-wing politics. I think the truth is the SNP's vote declined so much. Personally, I believe because they didn't promote Indie Ref 2 enough. I actually felt during that election, I've got to say to you, it was like the old John Cleese sketch, don't mention the war. I felt, number of programmes I was watching, don't mention Indie Ref 2, or this is a bit of Indie Ref 2. And the SNP would then say, I mean, of course we're for independence, it's in our constitution. No, that's not enough. We know that. That election, as 2015, as 2016, should have been fought with Indie Ref 2, clearly emblazoned in the banner. That's how you enthuse people. That's how you unite the Yes family. 200,000 people, I think, were demobilised, who thought, well, what's the use? We sent 56 down, no made any difference, they're not even calling for it now. So from my point of view, the lesson of that general election earlier this year isn't that you don't go and use the mandate that you've got. On the contrary, the lesson is if you don't use the mandate, you might not win another mandate. That's the problem. We have the intervening of the Brexit vote. And I'm a socialist who will defend my right and my criticism of the European Union to my dying breath. It's a big business club. It represents big business. It promotes big business. It's got nothing in common with promoting working class living standards or defending trade union rights. I oppose the European Union. However, I've got to recognise that over 60% of Scots said no. No, we don't want to leave the European Union. We want to stay in it. That is another reason for IndyRef 2. Because in March of 2019, Britain's out. Britain's out of a club that Scotland voted to stay in. Dragged out, despite its opinion. Now, personally, I would rather see it in an independent Scotland us debate the European Union membership. Just as I want to see us debate NATO membership. Just as I see us want to debate whether we continue to have a monarchy. I want us to debate all of those things. And by the way, I'll put my hand up and say if I'm wrong and I lose a vote, that's the way it goes. That's democracy. But at least Scotland decides. Not England deciding for us. Scotland deciding. If I lose the vote on whether we're in the European Union, whether we remain members of NATO, I can live with that as long as it's the Scottish people, the majority of the Scottish people that take those decisions and not people in England. So from my point of view, we have a situation now where the SNP didn't mention IndyRef 2 at recent conference. And there may be tactical reasons behind the scenes. I happen to think that they mentioned some very, very positive measures. I mean, I've been calling for a national investment bank for 3 years. Because if we're going to have the public works programmes that we need, the new houses, the repairs to schools, the new hospital wards, if we're going to have all of that, we need a national investment bank. We also need to have our own currency. Because I don't want the Bank of England to ever be able to turn around and say, no, we're not releasing the money for anything. I don't want the Royal Bank of England to be able to tell me in any way, shape or form in an independent Scotland what we can and can't do. We need our own currency, we need a national investment bank. And what a wonderful measure to introduce a publicly owned energy company. Long overdue. Long overdue. I mean, how many of us here have fought under the slogan of it's Scotland's oil? Well, maybe we are actually going to turn that into a reality. I don't just want electricity. I don't just want gas. I don't just want hydro. I want all of that to be owned by the people of Scotland. But I also want the oil fields to be owned by the people of Scotland as well. That is our resource to be used for our development of our hospitals, our schools, our social infrastructure. Every other country in the world that found oil is richer. We're the only country in the world that became poorer on the discovery of oil. We have those arguments to have in an independent Scotland. Our land. We have the most unequal distribution of land in the whole of Europe. We have a tiny minority of absentee landlords who own our land. In an independent Scotland, we should own our land. It should belong to the people of Scotland as part of our national wealth. So if the tactics of the SNP was to put out there some progressive, and undoubtedly they're progressive policies, and to leave the question just now of IndyRef 2, the date, off the table until next March, I could live with that. I could live with that. Because I don't think we need another 12-month campaign, brothers and sisters. Not in your Nelly. 6 months will do. 6 months will do. It gives the unionist press less time for the polluted poison to be promulgated across all of the broadcast. We have an opportunity here. An opportunity. At the March Spring Conference of the SNP, I thoroughly hope and call for the SNP to announce in their F2 in September or October of that year. And those who say, but Tommy, only if the opinion polls are positive, only if the opinion polls tell us that we're going to win a majority, I say you might as well wait for hell to freeze over. The idea that the only time we're going to trigger into F2 is if the opinion polls indicate that we're going to win a majority is to postpone it until the 12th of never. That's the reality. And we have to take lessons. I remember looking at the poll, January of 2013. Guardian newspaper, support for Scottish independence slumps to lowest level since devolution. 23%. This was based on the social attitude survey. This wasn't just an opinion poll, this was a social attitude survey which is supposed to be more reflective of opinion. And apparently in January 2013, support for independence had fallen to its lowest since devolution, only 23%. And then you go to October of that year, October 2013. Now remember, that's less than 12 months before the September poll. Scottish independence support at 25%. When asked should Scotland be an independent country, 25% said yes. Less than 12 months before the referendum. Brothers and sisters, I put it to you. If we were to judge and gauge whether to have a referendum based on opinion polls, we would have never had the referendum in 2014. Because we didn't have the opinion polls in our favour. But what happened? Let's look at the reality of what happened. Less than a year before, we're at 25%. Then we go out there. We have thousands of meetings, stalls, social media. We engage with people. We take on the arguments. And we go from 25% to 45%. Despite the poison and the lies. And this is the point that I wanted to refer to when I talked about it earlier. This is the point that we have to put into the mix now. You see, the reason the unionists are so desperate to build a narrative that says, oh no, don't do it now, SNP support's fallen, there's no support in the polls, you shouldn't have indirect F2. The reason they're so keen to deflect us from that path is because they have fired their bolt. Their one-trick pony has performed. The lies about pensions, the lies about jobs, the lies about the frigate orders in the shipyards, they can't be repeated. That's the problem. They threw everything at trying to rubbish the idea that we could run our own affairs, that we could stand up and actually develop a modern democratic country that we could be proud of. They've thrown everything at us and we're still standing. And this is the point for us to take home tonight. We're not starting at 25%. We're starting at 45%. That's the difference. The support in the polls has hardly moved. Goes up a wee bit, back to 45, up a wee bit, back to 45. Who here honestly doesn't think, in the background of the Brexit chaos, in the background of Maleficent May and her horrible, dysfunctional government, in the background of the reality that has now revealed itself of the lies that they told, who now thinks at 45% on the back of a 6-month campaign, enthusiastic, confident, that we couldn't go from 45 to 55%. That's within our grasp. It's within our grasp. But if we delay, not only will it be a tactical disaster, because a delay is based on, oh, we'll get a renewed mandate in 2021. Well, you know what happens with politics? Disillusion can set in. Who knows by 2021? With a combination of the political factors that are playing at foot, with the Westminster cuts that they are carrying out, that Scotland, unfortunately, I would argue they have to defy the cuts. Unfortunately, they're passing on a lot of the cuts. By 2021, disillusion could have set in to the extent that we don't win a majority at the 2021 elections. I don't want to take that chance. People say to me, oh, but why, if we take the chance to go for indirect 2, we might not win. Of course we might not win. Come on. There's not a fight that's ever worth winning that you've got a guarantee before you start. The only guarantee you've got in this life of ours is if you don't fight, you don't win. Surely we have to get the indie movement and the SNP behind that strategy. Because the second thing is this. If they don't use the mandate they have, what does it say about the Scottish Parliament? What does it say about future mandates from the Scottish Parliament? The very credibility of the Parliament is on the table now. If you fight an election to get a mandate, you have a debate and you win a mandate, and then you don't use the mandate, what's any future mandate worth then? That mandate, brothers and sisters, has to be used. And it has to be used by spring 2019 at the latest. I would prefer that we go for September or October 2018, when the Brexit chaos is going to be its absolute boiling point, where Johnson and May are a collection of dysfunctional, privileged, pompous, arrogant politicians are going to be exposed even more and more for what they are. That's when you strike. We don't wait and wait and wait and give them the chance to recover, give them the chance to get more strength. They'll not stay as weak as this forever. They'll recover. That's what the British ruling class does. It recovers. Let's not let them recover. Let's hit them while they're down. Let's name the date. And I can live with waiting till next March till we name the date. I can live with that. As long as there is an understanding that that is going to happen. We will have the enthusiasm on our side. We will have the courage on our side. We will have the arguments on our side. We'll have learned some of the lessons for 2014. We need to tie down the currency question. We have a Scottish currency. That's what we go for. We don't need to tie down the question of Europe any longer, because let's face it, that was one of the guarantees, wasn't it? Vote no and you'll stay in Europe. Vote yes, you'll not be able to stay in the European Union. It's gone. That's one of the parts of the one-trick pony. It's gone. So from that point of view, brothers and sisters, I would passionately ask, and obviously I'm arguing this from a socialist perspective. I'm part of the socialist wing of the independence movement. But I don't think that it is necessarily just a socialist argument. I think it's a common sense argument. I think it's a pragmatic argument. And I think it's an argument that we need to have within the Indie family, and that we need to win that argument so that we have the referendum in 2018 and we have our independence by 2020, maybe to celebrate along the declaration of Arbroath. Thanks very much.